Write that down, Fumi Saito. Write that down, Fumi Saito.
All right, welcome back. Hi everyone. Hello from Burbank, California. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Write That Down. This week is upon us via Fight Game Media Network. My name is Justin Knipper. I edit for FightGameMedia.com, staff writer WrestlingObserver.com. I also work for Pro Wrestling Noah and Cyberfight, and I'm back once again this week with Japan's leading pro wrestling author, writer, historian, sociologist, broadcast journalist, Mr. Fumi Saito. This week, we are finally focusing on the father of Japanese pro wrestling himself, Rikidozan. This episode, this week, we are covering up until about 1958 in his life and his career. We will pick up next week from this point, from around 1958 onwards, to talk about the latter part of his career and his overall impact and influence on Japanese pro wrestling and post-war society in Japan in general. If you have not already, please subscribe to the Fight Game Media Network podcast feed on Spotify, Apple, wherever you are listening to your podcasts. If you're listening to this and you're not subscribed, hit subscribe. It helps us out very much. Let's jump right in. Rikidozan, part 1. Yeah, that's right. We're stepping right in because we got a big story to tackle today. We're going to tell the life story of Rikidozan, who officially passed away on December 15th. What year was that?
1963.
1963.
So 59 years ago. And today is Rikidozan's 60th anniversary memorial. It's a Buddhist thing that exactly 59 years ago today. But it's the 60th memorial in Japan. It's a Buddhist thing that you count the day he passed as one. So it's been exactly 59 years. 59 years ago today, December 15th. But in the Buddhist way of counting it, you count the day he passed as one, then you start counting. So it's today is 60th year memorial in Japan. And then people gathering at his memorial park at the gravesite today.
That's in Nishinipori, I think.
In
Somewhere.
Ikigami.
It's kind of a
Ikigami.
quiet area. I know that. I've never been, but I've always wanted to stop by.
All right, next time you're in Japan, let's go there.
There's the statue.
There's a statue there. Yeah. And you can visit all year long. But today is the day. Yeah. 59 years ago, Rikidozan passed. And his, well, the books been written, books and books and books been written, and movies and movies and movies been made.
That's right.
And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I remember seeing the years ago when Netflix was still, it was still on the come up. That was where I first saw the Rikidozan movie from like 2004, 2005.
Okay, the
couple years afterwards
was from
the Korean
Korea, South
yes.
Korea. Yeah, actually, the movies been made in Japan in Japanese, and there's we haven't seen it, but there's movies been made in North Korea. Okay, but we know so little about the country. And South Korea, the one you watched, is a Korean interpretation of Rikidozan's life and time. Yeah,
featuring a lot of wrestlers from that time.
It was interesting, like Keiji Muto playing Harold Sakata, and
Akiyama was in it.
Akiyama was in it, and Hashimoto was in it. Masakatsu Funaki played Masahiko Kimura.
Like the Sharp brothers you mentioned, Bart Gunn.
Bart Gunn, and yeah, they were there in there. It was interesting, that they actually used, real wrestlers for that part, and filmed in Japan and filmed in Korea, and it was very interesting that the lead role guy, he really put on 20 pounds to play Rikidozan. Yeah, it was an interesting movie. Rikidozan in Korean, Yokuto-san. Yeah.
But even still, it doesn't tell you the full detailed story of
But it's so mysterious. Yeah, we're going. Yeah, this podcast. Yeah, write that down. Right.
Mm.
and we always try to get to the bottom of it a little bit.
Mm, sure.
And but about life and the time of Rikidozan, still some of these elements are very very mysterious, and I don't think we can cover everything about Rikidozan in 2 episodes of our podcast. In our part, 2 hours, 3 hours, probably. But I don't think we can do everything. But as much as we know, and as much as how we look at it today, and of his historical facts, as much as dates and places and what he has done, it's well documented, and the circumstance of his death that it's been reported so wrongly in the English speaking world, that we'll cover that. And yeah, we'll start. Where do we start? It's a lot of things are still mysterious, and it's not just about wrestling. It's like he was a product of the wartime.
Very much so. And I think if we had to start somewhere, I guess we have to start in a
From the
different
real
Japan.
history.
Yeah, and I think he's one of the main pro wrestlers that's so not just from Japan, but from all over the world. That's so tied to the history of what was happening at the time,
Oh, definitely a product of the time. Yeah,
and the
in wartime.
Japan that he I guess lived in, or I guess would you even call it Japan today? I don't know, but it was a different.
Yeah, during the war, the pre-war, and during the wartime, and the post-war
Yes.
rebuilding Japan period. I mean, he lived it, and he was epitome of like a Japan becoming independent again. Yeah,
Mm. So
and the beginning of the television,
beginning
beginning
of
of the wrestling,
television, but
beginning of wrestling. Yeah,
I think one of the key factors into really understanding Rikidozan is understanding his heritage or his upbringing. And
yeah. Because people say he's from North Korea, but actually, he was from the northern part of the Korean Peninsula. And back in 1920s, the entire Korean Peninsula, there was no such country as North Korea or South Korea like today. The entire Korean Peninsula was Japanese colony at the time,
mm,
product of wartime, huh?
mm,
And as mysterious it is, his birth date, some record shows he was born in 1920. Some record shows he was born in 1922. And wrestling records is always 1924 that birthday. That's like mysterious right there, right?
mm,
And he is from the northern part of the Korean Peninsula, which was part of Japanese colony at the time. But today's geographic map, yes, it's part of North Korea, but there was no such country as North Korea or South Korea at the time.
mm, mm,
That's what we have to understand first. Then he did not come to Japan with Korean passport. He was a kid from colony,
mhm.
the
But
colony,
it was technically Japan at that time, so the travel.
yeah, occupied by Imperial Japan,
Mm,
and it was a wartime, yeah, and the entire Korean Peninsula being Japanese colony, they spoke Korean at home, but the school was taught in Japanese language,
mm.
yeah, and so that was part of Japan, Imperial Japan.
And I mean,
So,
I don't want to get too off topic, but I would say it's still part of Japanese culture today, for sure. I mean, it's a different
well, yes and no, yeah,
step.
it's just
It's not like when Rikidozan was. It wasn't like that time, but it's still a part of society. Um, it's something that it's just a part of everyday life in Japan. That just the fact, not that it functions.
yeah, including discrimination,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Um,
Korean descent.
it's an element of Japanese life. Probably always will be,
Yeah, yes and no, yeah. So,
and
but
it'll take on
but
different forms.
but
But
but yeah, this is not just wrestling story, but we we need to understand this the background that there's a real history in order to understand Rikidozan as a big picture.
mm. And
So
being able to
I guess
understand him gives you really a clearer understanding of the country and how it developed.
or the entire Asian area.
Sure.
as a whole.
Far
Yeah,
East, yeah.
yeah. Uh, so some of the Korean record shows that he was born in 1920, and some of
Hmm.
the record shows he was born in 1922.
Yeah, lots of
And
mystery
and
surrounding.
sumo record and wrestling bio always list him as born 1924. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
and some of the birthday July 14th, but in the official record November 14th. And maybe like July 14th, it was handwritten in like a 714, right?
Sure.
And in 1114, and somebody misspelled something in between. We don't know about that. But because he had clearly had two sets of birth certificate. That's mysterious right there, don't you
Hmm.
think?
Hmm.
He was born in Korea, but he also had a birth certificate as if he was born in Nagasaki, Japan.
Which is very far from where he was initially born.
Yeah,
Where's
but
it?
that's his small sponsor's home address.
I see.
Yeah, yeah. And that the Japanese citizenship wasn't for wrestling. He did that apparently second, third year in sumo wrestling.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's been understood like widely that he switched passports from Korea to Japan during his wrestling days. It wasn't like that. There was no Korean passport when he came to Japan at the age of either 15 or 16 or 17, right?
Hmm.
And also, uh, we talked about this Buddhist thing, but in Korean calendar at the time, when you were born as baby, it's not 0, it's 1 year old.
Ah, different way of thinking about it.
You know what
So
I'm saying?
it'll throw the dates off, sure.
Yeah, because some of the religious background or some of the country or the different parts of the world, when you were born as a baby, you are 1 year old already.
Hmm.
That's how they count. And in some countries, yeah. So either he was born in 1920 or 1922, or as wrestling and sumo record shows, he might have been born in 1924. But that's not really um, justify the fact that he had baby in Korea. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
When you were 15, you probably wouldn't have had a baby in back home. So
Not usual, but it happens.
yeah, yeah. Anyhow, the actual record, he was a sumo wrestler between 1940 to 1950. Yeah, 10 years. Either being 16 to 26 or 15 to 25 or 17 to 27 years old. But yes, he was sumo wrestler for 10-year period, 1940 to 1950. Then the real history lesson, 1941, around this time of the year, there was Pearl Harbor, right?
Hmm.
In 1945, summer of 1945, there was Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Hmm.
So he was not the soldier. He was sumo wrestlers, all through this, Second World War time. He was in Japan being a sumo wrestler, but there was a war and there was a bombing in Tokyo that our parents all experienced, and but he was sumo wrestler for a 10-year period, 19 between May of 1940 to August of 1950. Okay,
Hmm.
yeah.
And he
Then
was relatively successful too as a
yeah,
sumo.
yeah. Sekiwake sumo
Sekiwake.
wrestler.
You
Yeah,
can
it's
listen
right
to our
underneath.
episode about sumo from earlier this year for all the details on that. But Sekiwake
Yeah,
is
the
like
grand champion is Yokozuna.
mhm,
Grand champion is Yokozuna, and the champions are Ozeki. Then underneath, you have Sekiwake. He
mhm.
was Sekiwake sumo wrestler, so he was like a third from top
Mm.
ranking.
But
There are
that's very high up.
real high up, and that when he retired, I have a newspaper clip here, like a real old photocopy, of course. That when he retired and he cut his samurai hair thing off, it was in newspaper.
Mm, mm,
Rikidozan quit, not retiring, but he quit and he cut his hair off in the middle of the night all by himself. So he's not officially retired, but he protested something. He was a protest to the sumo association, and yeah, he was very high-ranking sumo wrestler, Sekiwake. Yeah, it was
mm.
almost was gonna make it to Ozeki, and then after Yokozuna, and yeah, in the night of August. Some records show September, but the night, let's say either, yeah, there's two sets of story. August 25th, the night of August 25th, or the September 10th. That in 1950, summer night at home, Rikidozan cut his hair off. You know the sumo wrestlers samurai hairdo.
Yes.
Yeah, he chopped the head off as a protest to sumo association, and he quit in that summer. But the sumo association did not acknowledge his retirement until following January.
Hmm.
Another controversy, huh? So all in all, he basically either quit or retired from sumo wrestling in 1950.
Hmm.
Yeah. In 1951, so there's a 1 year gap that where he was working as a construction worker and he was doing other things, in Japan, of course. So there was a 1 year period that he after he retired sumo wrestling and become professional wrestler. He somewhere that he had met American that the businessman, and the construction company he was working was building a lot of things for American troops.
Hmm.
Okay, he had connection with American
Hmm.
and American lawyers, and there was a Bobby Brand's wrestling tour for the tribute to American troops in
Hmm.
Japan.
USO, like a tribute to the troops sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the Korean War broke off in June of 1950. Okay,
Hmm.
and it was tribute to U.S. troops GHQ, General Headquarters in Japan, and also troops to the United Nations troops in Korea during the war.
Hmm.
Bobby Brands, the Harold Sakata, that Obira Aserin, that 6, 7 wrestlers from America came to Japan and ran the show for the tribute to the troops. September of 1951. Okay, then the former sumo wrestler, they were recruiting local pro wrestler to be in Japan, and retired famous sumo wrestler Rikidozan was had a connection already there. That the show started. The Bobby Brand's tribute to I mean tribute to troops show starts September of 1951. The That's when Ricky Dozan started working out in Tokyo with Bobby Brands, and they start practicing and becoming American style professional wrestler. Just after 2 weeks of training, Ricky Dozan debuts on October 15th of 1951 against his teacher Bobby Brands. The exhibition match, 10 minutes draw.
Mm.
Yeah. Then Joe Louis, the king boxing,
Famous, yeah.
the famous boxing team. He joins the tour, and he had the Joe Louis has exhibition boxing match, and it was all in all this 14 shows in Tokyo Memorial Hall. Memorial Hall is actually the old sumo palace that the GHQ took over the building and named it Memorial Hall. It's actually Sumo Palace, not this Ryogoku Sumo Palace, but the one two after before that. Yeah, but they used Sumo Palace for wrestling show in September, October, November of 1951. And Rikidozan and Kokichi Endo, the former um, judo guy, they debuted as an American style professional wrestler.
Hmm.
Rikidozan technically wasn't the first Japanese pro wrestler. You go back to 1890s, like a Sorakichi Matsuda, or the 1920s, Mari Matsuda, you know, there's a quite a few, not quite a few, but several Japanese wrestlers who traveled to America and became professional wrestler. But the most famous one, but almost like a not a fictitious, but official, or more like a storytelling uh, that the history of Japanese wrestling. Rikidozan was the original Japanese professional wrestler. Does that make sense?
He was the one to really start to make a splash with fans in Japan.
And it had to be the post-war
That's
period.
right. Yeah, we're talking early 50s. It's only a couple years after the war finished.
Yeah, 1951. It's like 60 years after war. It's still U.S. occupation,
Hmm.
and San Francisco peace signing, was in the summer of 1951. Just 2 weeks after San Francisco peace signing, wrestling was already in Japan.
Mm.
There's like a planting the seed of professional wrestling in Japan. They were looking for local Japanese, somebody or former sumo wrestler or former judoka and somebody to become American style professional wrestler, and the business will be here in Japan.
Mm.
Yeah, so Rikidozan in October of 1951 had 2 weeks of training and debuted right away against Bobby Brands himself.
Mm.
But it was just the very beginning, very beginning. Following year, February of 1952, that Ricky Dawson becoming full-time professional wrestler, and he went to Hawaii to train. He did not want to look like a former sumo wrestler who was big belly. There's a Japanese American former professional wrestler Okishikina was waiting for Ricky Dawson in Hawaii
Mm-hmm.
to train him to become real American style professional wrestler. Oh, that was 1952. In Hawaii, he debuted right away against a wrestler called Chief Little Wolf. There was already a territory in Hawaii at the time.
Mm-hmm. NWA, NWA, like Honolulu or.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and the promoter's name was El Karasik. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
way before your, Ed Francis or the Leah Maivia, took over. There was a pretty big, territory uh, in Hawaii that people like Luthes travel and comes in and defends his title, you know. And El Karasik was had a plan, from the California, San Francisco territory to Hawaii, Hawaii to Japan, and they were gonna make this Pacific wrestling territory, which was a plan. And Rikidozan was sent to Hawaii in 1952 and spent first 5 months in Hawaii training with Okishikina. Then June of 1952, he went to America, the mainland, San Francisco, and spent 1 year there working. How to be a wrestler, how to be promoter, how to be a TV producer, and the whole bit. How to run wrestling business. Not just learning how to, learning the ropes, of course, as a 10-year experience as a small wrestler, great. But he was still rookie as a professional, American style professional wrestler, right?
Mm.
Yeah. And so he spent the entire year 1952 all the way to March of 1953, 13 months in America, and learned how to work, in the ring as a wrestler, and how to do the TV show or how to promote house shows, and how to run the wrestling company basically,
Mm.
or how to book the matches, I guess. Yeah.
He was on an OJT trip. He was on the job training for his career
Probably.
on the way
Yeah,
back
but
from
he
Japan.
was like he had the vision, to
Mm.
make he will be the king of this new sport entertainment called professional wrestling.
Mm. Western sumo.
Yeah, what they're calling a Seiyo Zumo. Yeah,
Mm.
Western sumo. Cause it must have been really similar for Rikidozan, huh? Because it there's a shoot, there's a work, and it's a mix of it, and also closed society that you only let your peer, in, and you don't tell anything to anybody from outside.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Still closed society.
Yeah, complete kayfabe era, right?
Mm.
But sumo was the same way. Yeah. So he understood wrestling like he pretty much understood sumo wrestling, and it was similar then. And also, Rikidozan was the one who brought all the sumo culture into Japanese pro wrestling culture, like having all your disciple protege to your dojo, the sumo bear situation, or the rookie will be living there and live, breathe, and sleep and practice and live. It's the same way of training as sumo society,
Right.
and yeah, that's how they train their rookies, and the, the tournament schedules, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and things were and senior wrestlers to rookie wrestlers hierarchies.
It's so similar. Even today, the whole structure, the foundation or the fundamental structure of pro wrestling in Japan is really
Portion, yeah,
close.
because Rikidozan brought all those culture and their customs from sumo wrestling into pro wrestling in Japan. Yeah, and eating chanko food, right?
Even some training techniques or stretching techniques or
Oh yeah, that the sumo push up and sumo sit ups and
mm,
how to tackle each other and yeah, there's
stretching the
similarity.
legs and having the
Of course,
wide, yeah, wide,
yeah,
wide base and
and using body weight instead of the pumping iron. Yeah,
sure, sure.
yeah, very similar. Yeah, and the lifestyle itself. Yeah. Anyhow, that the 1952, the entire year he spent in Hawaii and America, and rookie, but he had over 100 matches. That's why he met people like Sharp Brothers, and he comes back in March of 1953 after 13 months, in States. Then in the summer of 1953, July 30th to be exact, he formed Nippon Pro Wrestling Kyokai, that Japan Wrestling Association, that company body first, not the promoting company like your shows, but he came up with your association, that the organization first to make it like real professional sport, huh?
Mm.
That's when they had the real, like a real big wig from, Yomiuri newspaper, the, uh, you know, concert promoters, and that all these important people gathered, and they were part of the board member of this JWA, Nippon Pro Wrestling Kyokai. Yeah, and he built the foundation of this big organization first, much like your boxing organization, sort of.
hmm
Yeah, or sumo association, same method. You know
It was like
that.
a kind of a mix of all the combat sports at the time. It was a natural mix of approaches, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then yes, but the organization first. Then they built the Rikidozan gym dojo, and they introduced pro wrestling and in front of these all the important people, that the Rikidozan and Kokichi Endo had an exhibition match. This is what pro wrestling is, sirs. You know, a former judoka Endo and former sumo wrestler Rikidozan, showing these, the important people what pro wrestling is. Similar to sumo, very similar to judo, but not gis. And there's a
hmm
submission, there's a striking, but mostly grappling, and it's like fights, almost like street fight, but there's a rules, and they were introducing pro wrestling as very popular sports in America. We got to do this in Japan. Interesting, huh?
Mm.
In 1953, that was summer of 1953. In November of that year, he went back to Hawaii for a couple more months, to train, and also, I guess, to sign American wrestlers come in. And interestingly enough, that 1 year, oh, the technically 2 year rookie then, but only had like a maybe over just over 100 match under his belt. That December of 1953 in Honolulu, Hawaii, the International Auditorium, something like that. That he rookie Rikitosan challenged Luthes in Hawaii for the world heavyweight title for the first time
hmm
already. Yeah, and he got Luther's backdrop, the suplex, bounce back suplex thing,
Mm.
that the Rikidozan apparently got knocked out and unconscious and lost the title match, and it was all reported to Japanese newspapers. The the professional wrestler now Rikidozan. Rikidozan, he carried the sumo name, you know. Okay, in Korea his name is Kim Shinraku, right?
hmm
And sumo, his name was Mitsuhiro Momota, a real name. Then wrestling name was Rikidozan.
Mm.
Yeah. Then we talked about two sets of birth certificate, right? That there's a record in Korea, that northern part of Korean peninsula, that there's a record of his parents and family and his brothers, and born in that part of the world. Then there was another set of birth certificate. He was born in Nagasaki and he's as a son of Momota, and he was Mitsuhiro Momota, the Japanese. That's very mysterious right there. But uh, that's part of the wartime, huh? Like we said,
Mm.
yeah. And he was a kid from colony, and he was discriminated in record. That the books that's written in Korea, like to this date, is like all their focus is this discrimination thing in Japan, and in Japanese biography of Rikidozan, that was published in late 50s into early 60s. It was all written like he was born in Japan, and all these episodes, and how he got into sumo wrestling and became star. He retires and becoming a big superstar in new sport called pro wrestling, Puroresu, right?
Mm.
Anyhow, that at the time in 1952 and 1953, I believe he was already traveling with Japanese passport. I mean, I mean, 4 years, 5 years after the war, traveling to the States, Hawaii, to the mainland of the States, from Japan, back and forth. He must have had Japanese passport, huh?
Of course, yeah. I mean, it wasn't easy for citizens to travel around then. Even obtaining a passport was difficult right after the war. So uh,
Yeah.
it's
So there was
it's hard to say. Yeah.
so he didn't obviously he didn't start wrestling business on his own. There was like a group of people in as early as 1951 and 1952 that the professional wrestling as a business would be brought into Japan, and he was basically handpicked by Bobby Brands. Will make this guy professional wrestler, former sumo wrestler. And some of the books says that Bobby Brands was surprised that you don't have the sumo hairdo anymore. What happened?
Hmm.
Right? But, yeah, and he was expecting Rikidozan to have that hairdo like samurai, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, but he already cut the hair, and he was retired the previous year. Anyhow, let's fast forward the tape. He debuted in the fall of 1951, and went to America in 1952. Spent the entire year in Hawaii and San Francisco, and had over 100 wrestling matches. Then he came back to Japan in 1953, and JWA was formed. Okay, then he went back to Hawaii and had more training and more signing American wrestlers to come into Japan. And he already had uh, the world title match against Ruth in Hawaii, December of 1953. Then comes back in February of 1954, February 19th, 20th, 21, 21st. 3 consecutive days at the Sumo Palace, the wrestling was born.
Mm.
That's when Rikidozan and Masahiko Kimura, the king of judo, who turned professional wrestler in different way. That there was such thing as professional judo that they ran and failed. That before wrestling, there was a group of judoka who tried to make judo professional sport, and they ran professional show, but it didn't really work out, and he failed in a way. And Masahiko Kimura was brought to Hawaii as a judo instructor, and before he knew it, he was in wrestling ring for some reason.
Yeah. Just before that, his Kimura's ties weren't to wrestling, but they were kind of tied to the early days of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he was one of the main mm, Gracie
Yeah, the
opponents
connection
early
with
on.
Gracie's grandpa. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, he's a huge name in martial arts in the judo world.
Hmm. Kimura lock or double wrist
Oh,
lock,
the
as they say in
today's
pro
the
wrestling.
double wrist locks like Brock Lesnar does.
Sure.
That's called Kimura. That's
Kimura
his.
lock.
Yeah, Kimura lock. Yeah. So he just so happened to become professional wrestler in Hawaii, and thinking that he was going to be a judo instructor in Hawaii and being brought in, but the Hawaiian promoter wanted to use him in the ring. Professional wrestler, but professional judoka, right? And obviously, Masahiko Kimura wasn't a wrestling fan or never seen it before, right?
Mm.
But his wife was really sick, and there's like a very little supply for antibiotic in Japan at the time. That he bought all kinds of medicine in Hawaii and brought back, and he helped his wife and family. Yeah. Again, Masahiko Kimura also is product of wartime, don't you think?
Mm. Yeah. And
Yeah,
how
and
judo would evolve from there.
would help. Yeah, and also previously Masahiko Kimura was a type of judoka that never lasts once in 13-year period.
Mm.
You
And
know what I'm saying?
he was vocal about it too. And I remember, I don't know if it's a year or two later, but there were the matches between Rikidozan and.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay, yeah.
That's actually the same year. 1954 was the birth of Japanese pro wrestling as a business. Yeah, like I said, in the October of 1951, when Bobby Brands had this tribute to Troop show, Ricky Dozan basically debuted as a wrestler. But some people look at it as Ricky Dozan's debut date. But some people look at 1954 February, Ricky Dozan, Masahiko Kimura against Sharp Brothers World Tag Team Championship was the birth of pro wrestling. Therefore, that let's put that date as Ricky Dozan's official debut in Japan.
Mm,
I mean, before television, I mean,
mm.
in front of the television camera. Beginning of pro wrestling in Japan was beginning of basically television culture.
Sure, sure.
Yeah,
They kind of
uh,
coincided.
yeah, because Nippon TV and NHK they started just previous year, like in '52 and '53, just 7 years after the war, and U.S. GHQ General Headquarters was still in Japan. Then, yeah, um, Japan becomes independent after San Francisco signing, and wrestling business was already in Japan. Somebody must have planned, huh?
Mm,
Yeah. Anyhow, that this historical match, 1954, February 19th, 20th, and 21st, three consecutive dates at the Sumo Palace. That Rikidozan, Masahiko Kimura challenging uh, Mike Sharp, Ben Sharp's World Tag Team titles. That's from San Francisco, huh?
mm.
You know, it was not really announced as NWA World Tag Team title or anything like that. It was like a World Championship. What was interesting is though that if it was officially the beginning of pro wrestling, wouldn't you have single match or instead of tag team match?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that, but when I think
No,
about
me
this
neither. But
match,
Rikido,
I think about how much more important that a tag team match, how much more value it has in a Japanese pro wrestling setting, and I think tag team matches still have I don't know what it is. There's a uniqueness or a different kind
yeah.
of
All in
magic
all,
to it.
yeah, that professional wrestling, American style professional wrestling was introduced to Japanese TV audience with tag team match.
That's right.
So there's
That's
some
right.
showmanship in there, the double teaming tactics in there, and the people still have to learn what's legal and what's not, and how people get DQ'd or the close fist not allowed, karate chop yes. That there's a tag made, being made, and but you can still come in and break up the falls that's how Japanese TV audience learn the basic rules of professional wrestling. And also, interestingly enough, though, these are tag team situation, right?
Hmm.
Rikidozan never lost, and it was Masahiko Kimura always took the fall.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so it's like
Almost always.
all these answers are already in there. How to work wrestling match, how to make audience so excited and enjoy the match, and the Rikidozan still not winning, but not himself losing. I mean,
Hmm.
carefully booked match, right?
Very well thought out.
That's how, yeah, that's how bright and creative Rikidozan was as a booker and promoter. And he was the one making a big comeback during the match, huh?
Did anybody ever help him with booking, or did he do everything on his own?
On his own,
Hmm.
the king.
I
Yeah.
see.
I
I
mean,
see.
there's so maybe referee Okishikina or Harold Toki from Hawaii, but but it was Ricky Dozan one man show. The champion and hero and the booker and promoter and TV producer. Yeah, that says it all. Anyhow, that led to the December of uh, December 22nd to be exact, 1954 December 2nd, first and the only and the last one that the single match between Rikidozan and Masahiko Kimura.
Hmm.
Japan heavyweight title match.
Where was
20,
that?
that's at the Sumo Palace.
I was at Sumo Palace. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. December 22nd of 1954. The same year they introduced wrestling, and it was Rikidozan and Masahiko Kimura as a tag team, go up against world tag team champion, the Sharp brothers, Ben and Mike. And Rikidozan did not want to win the title right away. It had to be carefully laid out because Luther's match previous December, they all the news sports pay, section covered it. Rikidozan challenging world champion, the Yokozuna of pro wrestling, that he challenged Luthez and lost. So it was already in the picture that the the chase of world heavyweight title would be like a real long story. You know what I'm saying?
Mm, mm,
For Rikidozan's career. It will be challenging Luthez somewhere down the line. So that the world heavyweight champion, the name Luthez was established around that time. Then world tag team champion, Mike and Ben Sharp brothers. Actually, they're introduced as American wrestlers, but they're Canadians.
that's right.
That,
Yeah.
that's not that important. The Mike and Ben Sharp brothers, two giants, big guys, and they pretty much introduced the tag team wrestling. This is how to do. By showing tag team wrestling, you really learn about what the pro wrestling look like.
Yeah. And I
There's a
mean,
tag match. Yeah.
and back then it still there were still similarities between a lot of combat sports. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the tag team will show you how to do the little tricks, you
Sure.
know. Yeah, or how to cheat, meaning like do things behind referee's back, and
Hmm.
people very so innocently, get real mad at them. It's like referee, check, check, right? you know, and it was Sharp brothers had this perfect craft, how to demonstrate what the professional wrestling look like.
Hmm.
And the 2 out of 3 fall match, right? Rikidozan wouldn't lose the fall. It was Masahiko Kimura. Isn't that interesting? But it
Yeah.
really shows you what the pro wrestling is, in hindsight. But the audience was new, the television was new, and it was covered by the first night covered by NHK and Nippon TV, both live, and also in 200 locations around the country, like in front of Shimbashi Station, JR Station, that there's a little TV set to demonstrate what the television is, and they're showing Rikidozan's wrestling, and the little what the 15-inch TV screen. There's like a 20, 30 people gathered and watch the television in front of the train station, or in front of a coffee shop, or in front of an electric shop. That you want to buy TV so you can watch Rikidozan.
Right. You watch
Really,
outside. Yeah, and I think you could find those old
footage,
pictures,
news footage, yeah,
news
because
footage
when
or
they
photos.
yeah, it's a real phenomenal, very interesting picture of Showa era. That the introduction of television was also introduction of Rikidozan's pro wrestling, and Rikidozan pro wrestling made television, popular too.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah. Of course, TV helped Rikidozan become sensational superstar in television era, but Rikidozan's wrestling really helped to sell TV sets to the society.
sure.
Oh God, it's very historical. It sounds crazy, but it's true. And Masahiko Kimura uh, talks to Asahi newspaper in an interview, says, but the Rikidozan wrestling is such a showman. In the real contest, I'll beat him. And he
Right.
was reported, yeah, I'll beat him in real contest. So wasn't that Sharp Brothers match real? And there's like already this talk of pro wrestling being in it. Is this a legitimate contest sport, or is this show? And the question remains another decade or two. You know what I'm saying? Maybe
Hmm.
another 3 decades. And you have that the professional wrestling was born in Japan in 1954, basically local. I mean, with local hero in Rikidozan, and the beginning of television was the beginning of wrestling, and the beginning of wrestling was the beginning of television. It really helped each other. And the very same year, December, Rikidozan against Masahiko Kimura already happened. Two top pro wrestlers, former sumo wrestlers, former judo king, go at it. And we had we have to fast forward like a 20 years that later on that Masahiko Kimura had an interview with magazine saying that it was going to be draw, but the Rikidozan changed his mind and did that. Rikidozan brutally knocked Kimura out, right?
Mm.
Cold in the match. The footage exists. And well, Rikidozan died in '63, and the Masahiko Kimura interview won't come out until 1983, 20 years after, and telling the world that it was going to be a draw, and we promised, and it was in contract, but instead Rikidozan beat me in that way.
Mm.
You
And
know.
this was
Then again,
after he had said he'd have said what he'd said about Rikidozan to the media about if
yeah,
this were real, I would win. So, do you think this could have been some kind of maybe Rikidozan asserting himself and letting him
to make
Kimura
sure he
know?
beat him,
Hmm.
or just went off the script kind of thing. It's still mysterious because we have to look at the big picture that Masahiko Kimura was not going to make pro wrestling as his full-time career. It wasn't
Hmm.
going to be. And also, he was more of a judo person than he ever was wrestling person. And also, television choose and the media choose Rikidozan over Kimura.
Hmm.
And also TV people didn't look at Masahiko Kimura, that before pre-war judo hero, as your television new superstar, like Rikidozan. Rikidozan is so charismatic and smart, and probably backstabbed a lot of people in the process. But all in all, it was Rikidozan who created professional wrestling industry in Japan.
Hmm.
He had to win that match. I mean, dirty or not, he had to win because he was going to carry the wrestling business to the next decade. And television, that over 100, shows a year, and everything to come with it. That Ricky Dozan had to win that fight, as much as not as much as the Masahiko Kimura wanted. See, judo's Kimura was always looking at the matches and fight, or the everything, like almost like an amateur. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
In the same 1983 interview, Masahiko Kimura was saying that we were going to have rematches and rematches and rematches and go around the country 10 more times and make a lot of money.
Hmm.
And
Sure.
winning and losing isn't important. We're gonna do the junkin, like a rock, papers, and
Sure.
scissors.
Yeah.
Who's going to win tonight in rock, paper, and scissors. But that's how he looked at pro wrestling business: work or shoot. Ricky Dozan looked at the business a little bit more seriously. To conquer this whole industry, he had to win.
He viewed it as a business, and he was introduced to it as a business, whereas Kimura is coming from a sports and martial arts background, and um, egos are going to clash when those core philosophies are at odds.
And Masahiko Kimura did not know how to entertain people either.
Right, right, and
Because in the judo, yeah, you want to beat your opponent as soon as possible in most effective way.
mhm.
Whereas Ricky Dozan wanted to entertain people for 20, 30 minutes.
Very. I think even today that philosophy it splits wrestlers and fans even today.
Or MMA people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or just people who think wrestling should be one certain way, and other people who think wrestling isn't just the athletics, but it's the entire business. Every element of it is it matters, and the winning and losing part that's that's not how that's not exactly how it works.
Yeah, but even as a work, they superstar need to win though.
Sure. So,
That's how Ricky Dozan looked at it and became king of
mm,
this wrestling industry. And Masahiko Kimura formed uh, kokusai wrestling done in back in his hometown in Kumamoto. He ran his own wrestling shows, after that, but nobody really cared, really,
Mm.
as a
What year
pro
was
wrestler.
this? This was
Um,
1956?
54, 54 and 55,
Oh, still.
56. Yeah, that he brought in people that the Raul Romero, the Romero special move,
Sure.
that
Hmm.
put the guy on upside down and your opponent facing the ceiling.
Also known as a surfboard.
Yeah,
Some
but
people
the
call it
turn,
over here. Yeah,
yeah, and then the
Jushin
turn,
Liger made it
all the
very
way.
famous.
Oh, of course, and Aja Kong.
Aja Kong,
Yeah,
Ultimo
well, a lot of
Dragon.
women's wrestlers do that. Ultimate Dragon does that too. Yeah, it's a Romero special called
Mm.
that's done, created by Raul Romero, the mask guy. Kimura brought him in, another Mexican wrestler to run their tour. And it's quite basically it must have been a lucha libre match, huh? But
I
he
don't.
was
Yeah, I mean, I guess what would maybe like a Yave style sort of mat wrestling match. Maybe not as I can't
well,
see.
yeah, to contradict it, to him his theory. Masahiko Kimura also tried to run wrestling shows on his own,
Mm,
and he even ran shows in Tokyo. But people didn't pay attention to Kimura's show as much as they wanted to watch Rikidozan's entertainment.
mm,
Yeah, and his international Puroresu done, Kokusai, uh, kind of closed his shop, and he and his partner Kiyomigawa went to Peru, went to Mexico, and all the Central America country, travel around there to be wrestler. And so Masahiko Kimura, as much as the judo background he must had lucha libre matches around that time period.
must have. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But he eventually came back and went back to Takushoku University and became judo coach rest of his career, rest of his life. Yeah. It was never associated with wrestling people after that. But in the meantime, Rikidozan's company and NTV and all these things is like a booming professional wrestling, Puroresu, right? After uh, Sharp Brothers' famous historical match in 1954, then Kimura match in 1954. The following year, 1955, he brought in Asian heavyweight champion from Singapore, King Kong, and he beat um, uh, King Kong Teo. Yeah, that's a. I'll send you a photo. But he was the Asian. Um, he was basically a Canadian American guy, but he was running show in Singapore. That the real heavyweight guy, King Kong. He beat King Kong to become Asian heavyweight champion. See, by beating Masahiko Kimura, um, he became Japan heavyweight champion
Hmm.
as of December of 1954, and he defended this um, Japan heavyweight title against Toshio Yamaguchi, another famous judoka turned professional wrestler. He's from Osaka. That he beat the guy, so he basically conquered all the existing Japanese heavyweight wrestlers at that point. Then 55, he beat King Kong, right, to become Asian heavyweight champion. Then he brought 56. He brought Tom Rice, the Scorpion, Red Scorpion, Tom Rice from California to beat Pacific heavyweight title. So Japan heavyweight title, Asian heavyweight title, and Pacific heavyweight title in 1954. Luthez was finally brought in as world heavyweight title at the Korakuen Stadium.
Hmm.
I mean, before there was Tokyo Dome at the same place, a little bit, not exact same place, but yeah, basic same location. There was a Korakuen Stadium for the home of Giants baseball
Was
stadium.
this the one in Kuramae,
No, no, no. Where
or that
Tokyo
was
Dome is
afterward?
today.
That was What was the one that? Was that the one that Rikidozan built?
Ricky, no, no, no. That's not it. There's a Ricky Palace that comes in.
That's after. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll get to it. I'll get to that. It's Ricky Palace in
Mm.
Shibuya, but this time November of 1957, Luthez, world heavyweight champion, the king of pro wrestling, finally brought in to Japan to defend his world heavyweight title against Rikidozan. and it was held at the Korakuen Stadium. That's where the Tokyo Dome is today.
Hmm.
I mean, no dome. It's like outdoor baseball
Before the
stadium.
dome, yeah.
Before the dome, Korakuen Stadium, home of Tokyo Giants. Yeah, baseball place, televised, and 35,000 people, witnessed Rikidozan challenge, finally challenging world heavyweight title. The king of pro wrestling, Luthes, is in town, and sure enough, there was a 60-minute Broadway. Yeah,
Hmm.
but there's a two title match, October 1957, October 7th at the Korakuen the stadium, 60-minute draw. So Rikidozan not winning. And November 13th at Osaka pool, like a swimming pool, but they can hold like a, 55,000, 15,000. There's another draw. And they went around country like, the same tour that Blue Fest against Rikidozan happened six more times, like in Kobe or Fukuoka and Nagoya and Sendai, and all either draw or uh, that the Blue Fest winning it. And they went to Okinawa before Okinawa was returned to Japan. At the time, it was part of the U.S. Okinawa.
Hmm.
But, they went around all over the country and did Rikidozan against Luthes all over the country, much like Rikidozan Kimura original plan, huh?
Hmm. Yeah. But I mean, this felt like a very, very big deal. I feel like I think I've
Oh,
seen the
real big
foot.
deal.
There was a footage of they filmed together. I don't know if this was 55 or 57, but there was so much like TV about the match
Yeah,
before
yeah,
it
because
happened.
he was promoted, upon Luther's first arrival, he was the Yokozuna, the grand champion of professional wrestling, Luther's, that the biggest wrestler of the 20th century, world. Interesting enough, they did not announce National Wrestling Alliance or NWA or anything like that. It was NWA World Title, basically, technically,
Mm-hmm.
but in Japan it was the World Heavyweight Champion Luther's, the only champion. Anyhow, that the Luthes finally came to Japan in October of 1957, had a series of historical single match against Rikidozan. See, Rikidozan's legacy is so big that how long did it last? Actually, from 1953 to the year he died, 1963. Actually, Rikidozan's boom period, like his legacy, was just 10-year period. I mean, seemed a lot longer, right? Or the bigger.
Well, yeah, his legacy has lasted longer than his probably his life, but the impact that he made in the 50s and into the
Yeah,
60s, I mean, we still feel it today. He was I can't think of another not just person but character or being that at that time took a country that was feeling pretty down and really began lifting the country up again with his matches. And that was when we factor that into the rise of television, live
yeah.
event
Much
business.
like that the internet took over the whole culture thing. Television was it
Sure.
in early 50s. Black and white TV still, and not every house had TV. It was like, when Japan's making a comeback and becoming independent again, and then building a company again, and one of the things you want to buy first is television sets, huh?
Hmm.
You know, it's around the same period. Gorgeous George, Mr. Television, was big in America.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
but
it was happening so quickly, and the face that a lot of people associated with the television was Dozan.
Rikidozan, yeah, yeah, and 10-year period, and there was, Rikidozan Masahiko Kimura against Sharp Brothers. Then there was Rikidozan against Kimura. It's so brutal that a lot of the newspaper um, stopped covering wrestling after that. And also the question of like the Mainichi newspaper always had a wrestling result in sports section, but the Asahi Shimbun, another big huge newspaper, stopped covering professional wrestling as a sport in sports section,
Mm.
that they did their own research. In America, it's considered and categorized as sports entertainment and never was really categorized as a legitimate sports like baseball and football. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
back then it was still territory to territory. Maybe some cities might write something, but the big cities by that point weren't treating it that way.
And Rikidozan himself, in the newspaper and magazine interview, was saying that there's a real one and fake one, even among within wrestling.
Hmm.
There's a good wrestlers in San Francisco, but in South, it's all show business. It's something like that. Or there's an entertainment wrestling, but when you go into the in the world title match, it's all real kind of thing. I mean, it's just different logic to it. I
Sure.
mean, they was applied. It's always work, always a work. But in Ricky Dozan's era, that there's a different kind of discussion. That it's all show business. No, no, when Ricky Dozan does it, it's real or something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Much like later on, like Inoki believer, it's like everything else is fake, but the Inoki's real kind of thing.
Hmm.
How's that? Yeah.
I think that even still is a part of what we watch today. Not and it's not so easy to just talk about casually. It's something that there's a lot of unspoken parts or intuitive parts of what we're talking about right now. That what I mean, what when we say real over the years, I think the idea of real has even evolved too. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that but it's
And
always
also
been
what happened,
something
yeah,
people
and
fight
what
against.
happened during Masahiko Kimura Rikidozan confrontation, Rikidozan went ahead and did it. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Hmm.
Yeah. And as a result, he became the king. Yeah. So
So
it
there
was
is like a
yeah,
real.
it was necessary for Rikidozan to really win that match
Mm,
and set the record. And for Masahiko Kimura, judo superstar, wrestling was something that he was did as a job. Did as the way to make living, right?
mm. And it was an
And then
export. It wasn't a Japanese martial art. It was something else.
right, when Kimura was wearing a judo gi, he's a judo guy.
Mm,
When he put on the trunks, he's sumo. I mean, he's a professional wrestler, barefooted sumo wrestler. I mean, professional wrestler. Yeah. But Rikidozan really conquered the whole, not just the industry, but the whole country by beating Kimura. And Kimura went down from that period, and Rikidozan went on as a superstar of the decade.
mhm,
But that's the history. And you have so uh, the Shaw Brothers match, Kimura single match, then the King Kong match, and the Tom Rice match. Then finally, 1957, Luthes was brought in as world heavyweight champion, and Yuki Dozan still didn't beat him. So it's like there's a somewhere out there that's still above Ricky Dozan. You know what I'm saying?
mhm, mm. It creates a sense of, you can use your imagination. It creates a sense of maybe, yeah, Rikidozan is not the
Yeah, but
absolute
it's still
best.
something out there that's better and bigger, and yeah, then there's a whole series of Ricky Dozan story goes, like season one, season two, season three, season four,
Sure.
right?
Mm,
Yeah. Then 1958, following year, August 27th, Ricky Dozan finally beats Luthes in LA Olympic Auditorium.
finally.
Finally beats Luthes. Uh, and it was controversy enough. As of August 1958, Luthes wasn't even holding NWO World title at the time.
Mm. So is this where Rikidozan ends up?
Basically created international heavyweight title.
And was that the WWWA title? That was
No,
the
no, that's not that
that's later.
WWE. That's WWE Worldwide Wrestling Associate don't come in the picture until like 53, 52. I mean the 62, 63.
A couple more years. Okay, so he
Four
beats
more years.
Luthez in San Francisco.
No, Olympic Auditorium, LA.
Excuse me, yeah, Olympic Auditorium in LA.
August 27, 1958. And at the time, NWA World Heavyweight title was held by Dick Hutton.
Hmm.
That Ricky Dawson, I mean, the Luthez, put him over. But this is like very mysterious part of history that the program says Luther's International Heavyweight Champion
Hmm.
program. And it's more like a, you know, Luther's nickname at the time when he wasn't holding NW World Title. Anywhere he went, he was billed as international champion,
Huh.
like
With or without a
nickname.
belt? Just a nickname.
Well, he always had that Luther's belt. That's his.
Oh, the very small one, the thin one?
Yeah, it's got like a medal.
Or yeah, it kind of looks like an actual belt. Like you can wear it and hold up your pants with
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So that's like
That's the Luthez belt.
Luther's belonging, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyhow, that in Japan it was reported Rikidozan beat Luthez for the world heavyweight title. And some of the okay UPI, the news, the actual news, the wire news
Hmm.
service like AP and UPI. UPI, the news, feeding said that it was non-title match. It wasn't even a main event. Rikidozan against Luthez took place August 27th at the Olympic Auditorium, and Rikidozan beat um, uh, Luthez uh, like a DQ finish, the third fall. Anyhow, it was not world heavyweight title. It clearly states that by UPI Newswire. And upon his return to Haneda Airport, Rikidozan denies that I beat Luthez for the world title. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then quite controversy that, but the newspaper went ahead and said Rikidozan beat Luthez for world title. Then shortly after that, it was like almost quietly changed. He beat Luthez for international heavyweight title.
Mm.
Then world heavyweight title and international heavyweight title. Yeah, actually, almost it didn't make any difference. Both sound like a world title, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. You'd really have to see them to differentiate them in your mind
Yeah. So
completely.
then it was reported by Wrestling Magazine that the like additional story. Luthez at the time had another belt called International Heavyweight Title. He was honored by NWA that the previous year he traveled to the Europe. First NWA World Champion to travel the other side of the world, the Europe, and defended the title successfully. Then came back to stateside. Therefore, he was also international champion. I don't know if it was true or not, but a lot of the old wrestling magazine and the local show program underneath Luce's photo usually say international champion when he wasn't holding NWA title.
Mm.
Yeah, very touchy, huh? Like, almost iffy. But anyhow, that Rikidozan beat Luthez in Los Angeles that night and won some title. Okay.
Hmm.
And it was reported in Japan that he beat Luthez for the world title. And shortly after that, it was quietly switched to international heavyweight title, right?
This story sounds familiar. I feel like it's repeated itself over history. You had that, and later on you'd have Inoki and Bob Backlund. You'd have Fujinami and Flair. I mean, it's not entirely, they're not all
Very similar,
exactly the same, but
very similar.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same principles, and it's all based on what the media in Japan is reporting and what's reported in
And
the
how
States.
people remembered it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also at the building, like later on, if you watch old, like it's on YouTube, that later on matchup like Rikidozan against Dick Bayer Destroyer.
Hmm.
It's an international heavyweight title defense by Rikidozan, right?
Hmm.
But the ring announcer, in that ring announcer says World Heavyweight Title match at the building. So
Hmm.
they didn't make difference between the world heavyweight title and international heavyweight title. It's almost like one and the same. Or almost didn't matter.
Sure. It was
Rikidoza is a champ.
kind of
Rikidoza,
sounded general, sounded like the top of the top. International,
yeah, well,
world.
yeah, Sekai Senshiken champion, something like
Mm.
that. Yeah, so it's like it's not in the play-by-play announcer says international heavyweight title, so to make people even more confused. Yeah, but all in all. you have the belt and you start defending the belt. And Rikidozan held the international title until the day of his death. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Next, 58, 59, 60, 61. For the next better part of 4 years, 5 years, Rikidozan was international heavyweight champion in Japan and never lost the title.
Hmm.
That's what history is.
Hmm.
It's not interesting. But
Couple, just
what
a
was
word or two changes the whole perception, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then interestingly enough, a little bit later on, like in the 62, um, Luthes comes over, have another tour in Japan. He challenges Rikidozan for the international title. Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Mm.
But anyhow, that Rikidozan held the title. He brought back from America, and that more interesting piece of history is that all right, the newspaper asked Rikidozan upon his return from LA that okay, where's the belt, right? And the Rikidozan said, "I don't have that physical belt because I had to pay 10 grand. And I didn't have the cash, so I didn't bring the belt back. But I won the belt." That's true too, right?
Mm.
Because physical belt actually belongs to Luthes, you know. And later on, he designed the local international, not a local, but the international heavyweight championship belt design look exactly like the Luthes belt.
Mm. Very similar.
Yeah, yeah. So the also that the origin of international heavyweight title is somewhat mysterious. That the fact is Ricky Tozan defended his international heavyweight title the next 4 years successfully in the Big Show situation and was always champion.
Mm.
Yeah,
And he'd go on
and
to
that
face a lot of different big stars after Luthez too.
yeah, it was Don Leo Jonathan to young Bobo Brazil to Jesse Ortega to you name Freddie
Haystacks
Blassie.
Calhoun.
And of course, Haystack Calhoun to uh, younger Dick Bayer
Mm.
as a destroyer, as the best opponent, his opponent. And yeah, so
When did he start wrestling with the Freddie Blassie? Was that in the 60s? That was like early
62,
61, 62?
61, 60, 61, 60, 61 then. Yeah. Yeah, 61 for sure. There was an interesting twist of history. 1961, April, September to no, April, July to September, like a 3, 4 months storyline. That the first match, Ricky Dozan against Freddie Blassie in LA, and
Hmm.
second title match was in Tokyo, and third title match, Ricky Dozan and Freddie Blassie was back in LA. So it was like a really international twist, right?
Mm.
During that time period, JWA Nippon Pro Wrestling sort of ignored international heavyweight title and treated LA's WWA world title as the world heavyweight title.
Hmm.
That the Rikidozan challenging world title, uh, beating Freddie Blassie in LA and then becoming WWA world champion, and no mention of international heavyweight title that Rikidozan already had. Isn't that
Mm.
interesting?
Yeah.
So Ricky Dozan in 1961, Ricky Dozan beat Freddie Blassie and won the title in LA, all filmed. You know. Then he came back to Japan, and Freddie Blassie comes over and challenged Ricky Dozan for return match in Japan. Ricky Dozan win again. Then following month back in LA, Ricky Dozan lose the title by blood stoppage. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Did not really get pinned, but he was so bloody that the referee stopped the match. Therefore, the commissioner in LA honored the title, awarded the title back to Freddie Blassie.
Mm.
Another controversy ending of the match. Then the Japanese fan, Rick Dozan didn't really lose the match. That's LA decision.
Sure. It's up in the air still. A hollow victory.
Something like that. But so from 1950, 2 to 1953, 1954, big Sharp Brothers match, Masahiko Kimura match, 55, 56, Asian heavyweight title to Pacific heavyweight title to challenging Luthes at the Korakuen Stadium, and finally 58, summer of August 27th to be exact, 1958, Riki Dozan finally beats Luthes for the world title or international title. What was mysterious? If Rikidozan was to beat Luthez, to win the world title or international title that day, wouldn't you think they would film it?
You think so? The
Yeah, there is no video footage of that match.
Yeah, but that was also still a time when it wasn't just TV was so popular, but also it wasn't in the States today we have weekly wrestling. We have wrestling on once a week, the same time. It's established as it's almost like a ritual. But back in the late 50s, it was still searching for. I mean, it wasn't national. Um, it was just if a TV station wasn't already involved with the company, like over in Japan, it
LA
would be
was.
harder.
LA was.
LA. Oh, okay. So LA was. I'm not sure. I don't know. Um, it's
Well,
something.
that's my take on this. See, Rikidozan was going to win the mysterious world title or international heavyweight title, right, in LA sets, but he did not want to bring the video or film footage about that.
Hmm.
Only still photo
Still
and
photo,
and
writing.
and number of news, sports writer that was in the building that day. Not
Mm,
hundreds, but just about 5, 6 news reporters.
mm,
And they did not understand that the not a wrestling journalist, but the regular newspaper sports journalist, right?
mm,
And the ending was that the Rick Dozan was on an apron and that the Luthes giving a drop kick from the inside the ring onto the apron, and Ricky Dozan takes fall outside the ring and comes back and do the count out finish and the DQ first or the count out first, or it's like a really confusing ending that the sports journalist didn't understand. Isn't that interesting? It's all carefully laid out by Luthes and Rikidozan in hindsight. The history is really mysterious in a way. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. Especially back then too. I mean, geez, it's kind of. I feel like Luthez taught Rikidozan a lot in those late '50s years, for sure.
And also, Luthes was treated as your one and the only undisputed world heavyweight champion.
Right.
It's the hardest. It is the hardest thing in wrestling to beat Luthes. And Ricky Dozan finally beat Luthes in Los Angeles, not in Japan, and supposedly bringing back the world heavyweight title from America. And the world heavyweight title or international heavyweight title was to stay in Japan. That was Ricky Dozan's plan.
Mm,
Very interesting, huh? Well, we can go over second half of Ricky Dawson's, career from 58, 59 into 19, 63 because um 90 the 59 he created World League tournament every spring that the
mm,
spring tournament tradition starts. Much like today's IWG, I mean well the initial IWGP tournament or Jan Baba's Champion Carnival tournament or you know what I'm saying?
Still going today.
So
There, I think New Japan's Real World Tag League still happening,
oh, yeah, no, it just ended, yeah,
or just ended.
and,
That's right. All Japan
yeah,
has theirs. This is still a common tradition in Japanese
mhm.
pro wrestling.
So
The
spring tournament, World League, wrestling tournament was, created in '59, and Rikidozan went 5 consecutive years until the year he died. We'll cover that.
mm,
And '58 on, that the professional wrestling television becomes weekly program in Japan.
mm,
See, until then, it was almost like a boxing match. When the wrestler comes in, they'll air it. Sharp Brothers against Rikidozan Kimura, or Rikidozan against King Kong, or Rikidozan against Kimura, or whatnot. That it was like a television special. You know what I'm saying? Not
sure.
exactly, uh, not exactly weekly television program you watch every week, like every Friday night. It doesn't happen until like '62, when Ricky Dawson opened the Ricky Palace, his own building.
Mm.
Yeah.
It was a special event instead of a weekly tradition.
Right, right. Much like your boxing world title match. In the
Yeah.
meantime, they had the TV special like Ricky Dawson being commentary, and the Yoshino Sato and somebody wrestles on smaller building for the
Hmm.
TV show. But when Rikidozan does it, it was so special. You're a king wrestling tonight, kind of thing.
Mm.
In the meantime, yeah, the 1960, both Jan Bava and Antonio Inoki, like a 22-year-old Jan Bava and 17-year-old Antonio Inoki debuts, 1960.
That's all. We got to spend time talking about that too. Yeah, I mean, the rest of the business carried on through Antonio Inoki and through Giant Baba.
Yeah, yeah. I would like to, yeah, I want to stop at this international heavyweight title, story and mysterious, origin of the title. But all in all, it's still part of All Japan Pro Wrestling's Triple Crown, right?
Hmm.
So to this day, international heavyweight title came to Japan and became that household name. Yeah, it was Rick Dozan's title.
So next time, let's pick up around 1958 and into
Hmm.
the 60s, and then we can cover all that we just talked about with Baba, Inoki, uh, matches with guys like, again, we'll talk about Freddie
Yeah.
Blassie.
Okay. Well, one more thing. One more thing. It
Mm.
was like the occurrence and the night. We'll cover that next time for sure in details. But December 8th of 1963, Rikidozan was stabbed in the nightclub called the New Latin Quarter in Akasaka. That in the bathroom fight that this lower yakuza mob guy stabbed, right?
Hmm.
Rikidozan, and some of these English writing, English written, stories like he was stabbed by urinated, like a pissed knife
Like
and
a, yeah, a contaminated a
yeah,
knife
knife.
and
Yeah, yeah. The other story was that Ricky Dawson had $2 million in cash in U.S. currency and handcuffed himself to the briefcase, and he went to bathroom, and the mafia followed him and stabbed and killed him and cut his wrist off and stole the money or something real crazy.
yeah,
The
like a
truth is,
Pulp Fiction or something.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, the Ricky Dawson was not stabbed to death that night. In fact, after he was stabbed by this short knife, you know, that he walked back to the table where he was drinking and he had more drinks.
Hmm.
Then he walked up to the stage, where the live band was playing. There's a gang mobster in this building. Please, people, please be careful. Ha ha ha! Right? Then he went back to his table where he was drinking, kept drinking that night. Then his entourage, his friends, is like, "Sir, you're bleeding. You're bleeding. No, don't call ambulance. People know. Don't call the ambulance." Then he sat there and kept drinking until he didn't feel any good. Then he went back home. Then called the ambulance and went to the hospital.
Mm.
The stab happened December 8th, and he was in hospital for 1 week. Well, I wouldn't say finally, but he died of complication on December 15th.
Mm.
He was not stabbed to death at the you know bathroom. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right. It's not
He walked.
same story that we've heard.
Oh no, he went back to the table where he was drinking, had more drinks. You know, and his friends and entourage, these people said, "It was a sir, you're bleeding, you're bleeding." He said, nah, it's nothing.
Tough
And he
guy.
kept
Yeah.
drinking. Yeah, and they said, "We should call ambulance." Don't call ambulance, and people know. Ricky Dozan, that's not Ricky Dozan. It's like wanted to keep the image of it, you know.
Hmm.
And it's well documented. Books and books and books being written. And the guy who, the the yakuza mafia guy who actually stabbed Ricky Dozan, he
Hmm.
his name's out there. I don't want to mention his name, but there was the first court and the higher court and the Supreme Court, and he was charged with manslaughter instead of murder. And this guy served 7 years and got out.
Ah,
Yeah,
it's a
but
complex
that
story.
yeah, that's a real complex story. But the war start from around international heavyweight title winning from Luthez in LA in 1958. Then we'll cover in 58, 59, 60, 61, 63 until his death next episode. But
And
today,
mm,
yeah, today is Ricky Dawson's Memorial Day, December 15th. He died exactly today, 59 years ago.
So we'll pick up next time at 1958 and we'll talk more about everything. But if we have questions for you and we want to ask you about anything Rikidozan related, where can we find you online?
On Twitter at Fumihiko Dayo, Fumihiko Fumihiko Dayo on Twitter, or just Fumi Saito on Facebook. Please message me first.
Hmm. And on Twitter, I'm at Justin M. Knipper, Knipper. For this week, that's it. We're going to pick up next time. We're going to talk more about Rikidozan and all kinds of interesting Japanese pro wrestling topics. So until next week, Fumi, please take it away.
So long from Tokyo.
Write that down.